The wind carried the scent of dry earth and gasoline, whispering through the hills of Los Angeles. The city shimmered below in a sea of golden lights, but beyond the skyline, in the hushed darkness of Griffith Park, something sinister flickered to life. A flame. Small at first, like a breath held too long. Then, with the crackle of dead leaves, it reached skyward, greedily consuming the brittle underbrush. Miles away, Ethan Cruz sat in the firehouse locker room, lacing his boots with practiced efficiency. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, casting sharp shadows against the tiled walls. His body ached from a last shift, but fatigue was a luxury he couldn't afford. His mind, however, wandered, to Anna, to Lily, to the promise he had made to be home early tonight. The alarm shattered the moment. Fire reported near Griffith Park. All units respond. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. Wildfires in these conditions spread like a living thing, feeding on wind and drought-ridden land. The station erupted into controlled chaos. Boots pounded against the concrete floor as the crew raced to their trucks, pulling on gear, securing helmets. The fire engine roared to life, sirens piercing the night as they tore through city streets toward the growing inferno. As they neared the park, the glow became visible, an eerie, pulsing orange against the black sky. Even from a distance, Ethan could feel the heat pressing against the windshield. "That spread fast," muttered Diaz, the rookie beside him, his knuckles white against the seatbelt. Too fast, Ethan thought. His gut twisted. When they arrived, flames had already swallowed the trees in violent bursts, embers spiraling into the sky like fireflies. The team leaped into action, dragging hoses, shouting commands, their movements honed by repetition and necessity. Water met flame with a furious hiss, but it was like throwing pebbles into a storm. A movement caught Ethan's eye, a silhouette just beyond the fire line, standing too still for a bystander. The figure watched, unaffected by the chaos, before slipping into the shadows. Ethan's radio crackled. "We've got more flare-ups on the north side." He had no time to dwell on the figure. The fire was winning, leaping from tree to tree with terrifying speed. He worked in tandem with his team, cutting off the blaze where they could, evacuating hikers caught in its path. Then came the explosion. A violent burst of fire tore through the treetops as something ignited. A fuel canister? A propane tank. The shockwave sent Ethan stumbling, heat searing his exposed skin. His ears rang, his pulse thundered. Through the smoke, he saw it again, that same shadowy figure, just beyond the wreckage, watching. This was no accident. Ethan pushed to his feet, instinct screaming, but before he could move, the fire surged, cutting off his line of sight. A voice called over the radio, "Urgent. This fire isn't natural, Cruz. It's deliberate." Ethan clenched his jaw, staring into the inferno. Someone had started this, and they were still watching. Los Angeles Fire Stories. The inferno. Flames roared like a living beast, devouring the dry hillside with relentless hunger. The wind, once a whisper, had become an accomplice, fanning the blaze, pushing it toward the city's edge. Ethan Cruz moved with urgency, his every step calculated against the shifting inferno. Sweat slicked his skin beneath the heavy gear, the heat pressing against him like an invisible weight. "Cruz, we need another line over here." He turned, gripping the hose with both hands as he and his team battled the fire's advance. Water arced into the blaze, hissing against the superheated air. But it wasn't enough. This fire wasn't just spreading, it was attacking, jumping barriers, breaking containment faster than they could control. Something wasn't right. Ethan had fought wildfires before, but this one behaved differently. It moved too quickly, flared in unpredictable ways, as if fueled by something unseen. His mind flashed back to the figure in the shadows, the way they had stood there, watching. A shrill beep cut through the chaos. His radio. "Ethan," a voice thick with panic. "It's Anna. The fire's near our street." His stomach lurched. His home. His wife. His daughter. Anna's voice trembled. Lily's scared. "What do I do?" Ethan gripped the radio with a shaky hand. "You need to leave. Now." A crackle of static, then Anna's hurried breath. "The roads are packed. People are panicking." Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. He needed to be there, but he was here, trapped in the middle of a war zone with no way out. "Stay calm," he forced himself to say. Take Lily and head toward the freeway. I'll find you. A blast of heat knocked him backward. Another explosion, this one from a gas station a quarter-mile away. The fire was evolving, seeking out fuel, spreading not just by chance but by intention. Arson. It had to be. A firefighter ran up to him, breathless. We found something. Ethan followed him past the burning wreckage to where two others stood over a half-buried gasoline canister. His gut clenched. Someone had planted this. This fire wasn't a disaster, it was a weapon. A realization cut through his fear. If the fire was meant to spread, if it was being guided, then Anna and Lily were in even greater danger than he thought. He turned sharply, ready to run, but something caught his eye, a figure, barely visible through the rising smoke, standing near the charred remains of an old tree. The same figure as before. Ethan's breath hitched. The figure lingered for a moment, as if daring him to follow, before vanishing into the night. The radio crackled again. Fires jumped 2 more blocks. We're losing control. His hands clenched into fists. He had spent years fighting flames, but this was different. This was personal. He grabbed his helmet, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. We stop it here. Even as he said it, another explosion rocked the skyline. And the fire pressed closer to home. The escape. The fire had become an unstoppable force, swallowing entire blocks in its path. Smoke billowed into the night sky, thick and suffocating, turning the stars into faint embers behind a curtain of ash. Ethan Cruz sprinted through the burning wreckage, his heart hammering against his ribs. The fire was no longer just a battlefield, it was a trap. His radio crackled. Ethan, it's spreading faster than expected. We're being pulled back. Pulled back. That meant the fire was winning. That meant Anna and Lily. His grip tightened around the radio. I need a route out. I have to get home. A pause. Then, the main roads are blocked. You'll have to go through the fire line. Ethan clenched his jaw. The fire line meant going straight through the inferno. A deafening crack split the air. A power line crashed down ahead, sparks bursting as it struck the pavement. The flames surged, licking at his heels, forcing him back. There was no way through, not unless he found another path. He turned sharply, scanning the landscape. His eyes locked onto an old service tunnel, half hidden beneath a crumbling overpass. It was a gamble. If the fire reached inside, it would become a furnace, but it was his only option. Ethan charged toward it, the heat pressing against his back like a burning hand. He ducked low, pushing through the tunnel's entrance just as the flames roared past behind him. The air inside was thick with smoke, but he pressed forward, his breathing ragged. His thoughts raced. Someone had orchestrated this disaster. Someone had planted those canisters, guided the fire. And that someone was still out there. As he neared the other end of the tunnel, movement flickered in the shadows. Ethan slowed. A figure stood at the exit, backlit by the raging fire beyond. Not a firefighter. Not a civilian. The arsonist. Ethan could see him clearly now, his stance too composed, too deliberate. The way he lingered, as if waiting. The stranger tilted his head, as if studying him. Then he stepped forward, revealing the jagged scars that cut across his face. Recognition slammed into Ethan like a blow. He knew those scars. He knew him. Marcus. Ethan's voice came out hoarse, disbelieving. Marcus, a man Ethan had once called a friend. A man who had died in a fire 3 years ago. Or so he had thought. Marcus smiled, but it held no warmth. Hello, Ethan. Before Ethan could react, Marcus flicked something into the tunnel, a lit flare. Flames erupted in an instant. Ethan lunged forward, but the fire surged between them, cutting off his escape. Marcus's voice carried over the roar of the flames. Let's see how good you really are, hero. Then he was gone. Ethan turned, eyes burning, lungs screaming for air. There was no time to chase Marcus. There was only one thing that mattered. Anna. Lily. He forced his way through the fire, ignoring the pain as embers scorched his gear. Every second counted. Bursting from the tunnel's exit, he scanned the horizon, then froze. His house. Or what was left of it. The flames had reached his street. His home was gone, and there was no sign of Anna or Lily. The ashes. The world around Ethan Cruz was unrecognizable. His home, once filled with warmth and laughter, had been reduced to charred wood and smoldering rubble. The fire had moved on, leaving only destruction in its wake. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burned memories, and the silence felt heavier than the flames ever had. But silence meant nothing without answers. Anna. Lily. Ethan's voice was raw, his throat scorched from smoke and desperation. He tore through the wreckage, his boots kicking up clouds of ash. They had to be here. They had to be safe. Nothing. His radio crackled to life. Ethan, we've got reports of survivors moving toward the evacuation zone near the freeway. Survivors. Ethan's pulse quickened. He didn't wait for permission, he ran. His body protested with every step, but fear was stronger than pain. The city around him was a ghost of itself, buildings blackened, the sky still tinged with the dying glow of fire. At the evacuation zone, a sea of weary faces stretched before him, people wrapped in blankets, coughing from the lingering smoke, eyes filled with loss. Ethan scanned the crowd, his chest tightening with every face that wasn't theirs. Then, a glimpse of familiar blonde curls. He pushed forward, nearly stumbling as he reached them. Anna. Lily. Alive. Anna's tear-streaked face turned toward him. Then she was in his arms, trembling, clutching Lily between them. Ethan buried his face in their hair, breathing them in, grounding himself in the one thing that mattered. I thought we lost you, Anna whispered. Never, Ethan murmured. But relief was fleeting. The fire had been no accident. Someone had orchestrated it, manipulated the wind, the chaos. And that someone had looked Ethan in the eye and walked away. A familiar voice broke through his thoughts. You're lucky. Ethan turned. Standing just beyond the crowd was Marcus, alive, whole, untouched by the destruction he had unleashed. His expression was calm, almost amused. Ethan stepped forward, rage coiling inside him. Why? Marcus tilted his head. You don't remember, do you? And then it hit him. 3 years ago. A warehouse fire. A collapsed roof. A choice Ethan had made, one that had saved lives but left Marcus trapped behind the flames. Ethan had thought he was dead. The city had thought he was dead. But Marcus had survived. And now he had returned, to burn everything Ethan loved to the ground. The air between them crackled with unspoken history, with unfinished vengeance. Then, sirens. Police moving in, firefighters closing rank. Marcus smirked. This isn't over, Cruz. And like a shadow, he melted into the chaos, disappearing before Ethan could stop him. The fire was out. But the real fight had only just begun.